last week we clocked 1 year in office. Incidentally, the agency also clocks 32 years this month. So this briefing could not have come at a more auspicious time than now, when the Nigerian public ought to be informed about the state of the NDLEA after 1 year of a focused and pragmatic turnaround. To the bargain, this occasion offers me the opportunity to render accounts of my stewardship of this noble institution. But let us start with the state of the agency 1 year ago when I was appointed. Two days after the announcement of my appointment, I resumed work at this headquarters of the NDLEA on 18th January 1, and I had my first meeting with the management and staff that day. That first day will remain evergreen for me because I was welcomed by a disenchanted workforce. I faced an agency that had great expectations. I sensed fears, I could discern disappointments, I could feel pessimism. But at the same time, I got a good vibe of profound optimism. I knew the situation could be salvaged through the grace of God, but something extraordinary had to happen. Almost similar to how I felt on my first day as military administrator of Lagos State, which of course is a far more challenging assignment. But when you take over an establishment or a state in a great state of disrepair, there must be trepidations, and you will have to do something extraordinary to turn it around. The NDLEA was in a bad state due to years of neglect, a situation that allowed the rot to set in, leading to loss of efficiency, which in turn eroded public confidence in the agency, as well as caused allies and strategic partners to lose faith in the agency. In retrospect, the agency itself wouldn't be blamed for indolence. The problem in the NDLEA is better explained with the analogy of a machine with a manufacturing defect. This was at the point of takeover. The NDLEA was a forgotten agency. In fact, most people didn't know the difference between the NDLEA and NAFDAC. They thought they were the same. Underfunded and understaffed, the agency survived with a lean workforce of officers, men and women, who worked with grossly inadequate and obsolete tools and earned considerably less in salary than their counterparts in other government security institutions. The situation was so bad that payment of allowances of any sort, including burial entitlements to the families of the deceased officers, had stopped long ago. There was no promotion, a situation that left officers stalled on a rank, some for as long as 20 years. So at this time last year, the NDLEA was an agency afflicted with institutional defects, gradual but steady deterioration from within due to demoralizing work conditions and appalling staff welfare. At last, thankfully, the government mustered the willpower to salvage, reform, and rejuvenate this organization, whose importance to the well-being of society cannot be underestimated. And that government was the government of President Muhammadu Buhari, who read the situation correctly and subsequently took the bold and decisive step to revamp and guide the NDLEA for the task of cleansing Nigeria from the scourge of drug abuse and trafficking of illicit substances. The change couldn't have come at a better time because the dire findings of the National Drug Use and Health Survey of 2018 was a wake-up call, which showed clearly that procrastination was an invitation for a national catastrophe. Having 14.3 million Nigerians abusing drugs, nearly 3 times the global prevalence, with 10.6 million addicted to cannabis, portends grave consequences. And so, with this state of affairs, what did we do? It required a titanic effort to move the NDLEA from a near catatonic or moribund state to a functional one. To achieve that, a complete overhaul was needed, which must be pursued in a pragmatic, systematic, and sustained manner, and according to a well-forged blueprint. Earlier, I had spent time as chairman of the Presidential Advisory Committee on the Elimination of Drug Abuse, PASIDA, a body whose mandate was to make recommendations on how to rid the country of its drug problem, part of which operationally translated to how to restructure and fortify the NDLEA to achieve that objective. We had done our homework well by studying the agency and interacting with its officers, as well as consulting far and wide in the industry. In the end, PASIDA submitted recommendations that we felt would eliminate the drug scourge and as well help to reposition the agency for efficiency. By an act of providence, I found myself entrusted with the responsibility of implementing the recommendations of PASIDA with the announcement of my appointment by the President on January 15th last year. With the blueprint from PASIDA, it was not at all difficult to point out dislocations in the NDLEA architecture that needed to be reconstructed or restructured. We had worked accordingly in the past 12 months, propagating a slew of reforms, restructuring, that were implemented in sequence or pari passu. And the key areas are as follows. Personnel. We had to find a way to bring the workforce back to life with some impact measures. In this regard, the starting point was the inauguration of a harmonization committee under the chairmanship of Colonel Bako, which was tasked with working on all anomalies in the service and welfare of staff, such as delayed promotions, unpaid allowances, burial entitlements, and other cumulative failings of the agency in the area of career advancement of officers. Subsequently, we corrected the aberrations with stimulus interventions calculated to motivate our personnel, thanks to Mr. President. We promoted 3,506 officers. We paid allowances of particular interest, burial entitlements to families of 188 personnel who died in the line of duty. The last payment of such allowance was actually in 2014. We initiated a performance reward system of bi-monthly Best Performing Command Award, which after 2 editions became quarterly awards and individual personnel commendation awards. We paid insurance premiums, both of life and injury insurance, which had hitherto been abandoned for years. And we expanded the top hierarchy to accommodate more deserving officers, made possible by the structural reform of the agency. We also made a case for upward review of salaries and emoluments, which is receiving attention. What were some of the structural reforms that we embarked upon? We expanded the agency's structure, which was a belated development. The restructuring was calculated to strengthen the agency to function per the reality of contemporary drug situations, and as well create room for career progression for our officers and men. In other words, the imperative of sustained efficiency necessitated the restructuring of the anatomy of the NDLEA. Beautiful thing is the agency is comprised of very resourceful and educated personnel capable of rising to the occasion once properly motivated. Therefore, there was no shortage of capable and experienced manpower to drive the structural reforms. The reforms are as follows. The creation of new directorates. We created new directorates. Directorate of Planning, Research and Statistics. We created that. Directorate of Media and Advocacy. Directorate of Special Duties and Strike Force. Directorate of Airport Operations. Directorate of Forensics and Chemical Examination. We also created 14 zonal commands. The zonal commands are a group of state commands under the zonal command. We created the Office of the Provost Marshal to maintain internal discipline. We unbundled Directorate of Admin and Finance into Admin and Establishment 1, and secondly, Finance and Accounts. We also established a voluntary advisory body external to the agency, voluntary purely, called the Special Purpose Committee, SPC. It's composed of some of our regulators, experts, leading lights in this trade, and some of the members of PASIDA who are there with me. Voluntary, they are not paid. We also created a Chairman Special Task Force, which is an investigative body that answers only to me. Its functions are very important to me and the agency. Now, What did we change in the operational philosophies and processes to transform the NDLEA from a reactive and inert anti-narcotic organization to a proactive and vibrant one? We made major changes and introduced innovations to the principles and philosophies driving our activities. The major ones are as follows. We shifted our paradigm to an intelligence-driven process, which has given us an aura of invincibility. People wonder how we make our seizures and arrests. How did we know these drugs are contained in the various areas that we found them, whether it's false bottoms, or in cookie jars, or in women's hairs, or where the warehouses are located, and so on and so forth. Because the process is intelligence driven. We don't just move around aimlessly hoping to make arrests. We know exactly what we are doing when our operatives go out. And that's why you always, on a daily basis, find the NDLEA making seizures and arrests and diminishing the quantum of drugs and illicit substances on Nigerian streets. We adopted the maximum offensive action against traffickers. The whole business of getting rid of the drug scourge must be seen as a war. It's a complete war situation, and the principles of war apply. And one of the principal principles of war is offensive action. You could never succeed in a war situation by sitting down and waiting for the enemy to attack, and then you repulse it. And I must say, this is the second time this principle of offensive action has proved very useful. For those who remember Operation Sweep in Lagos, this was one of the key principles that were adopted, even though we did not advertise it. We always had a segment of the Operation Sweep that was going after the criminals, the armed robbers, and such miscreants in Lagos society. When you have such a principle, it keeps the other side off balance because they know you are coming after them. This non-stop tracking and arrest of traffickers gave the agency an edge in its drug supply reduction activities. We also weaponized asset forfeiture against barons, bearing in mind that the bottom line in the business of the drug trade is money and assets. We do not stop only at arresting, seizing, and prosecuting for jail terms those perpetrators. We also go after their money and their assets. Many would be happy to spend 10 years in jail and come out to enjoy their illegal loots. The NDLEA will have none of that. And this weaponization is one of the new steps that we are taking. We go after the forfeiture of assets of the parents, and we pursue the masterminds of drug trafficking networks using a combination of laws, including the NDLEA Act, the Money Laundering Act, and the International Tool of Mutual Legal Assistance Treaty. This has enabled us to go beyond the arrest to the actual dismantling of drug syndicates. Some of our mechanisms and interventions are as follows. The War Against Drug Abuse, WADA. This was launched by President Muhammadu Buhari on June 26 last year. It's an advocacy campaign designed to win public support and gain society's involvement in the efforts to combat the menace of illicit drug use and trafficking. The aim of WADA is to achieve public ownership and sensitization. And 6 months after, we have reached out to several states, met with governors, religious leaders, traditional rulers, educators, community leaders, social groups, among others. I have done that myself, and the state commanders have done that. The point of WADA is to get to the grassroots and mobilize Nigerians to the ills of drug use and where they should abstain, and also the matter of treatment. We have launched the National Drug Control Master Plan 2021 to 2025. The NDCMPE that was launched was the fourth in the series. The first was in 1999. We had another one in 2008, 2013, and this one. The NDCMPE was developed with the technical support from UNODC. It is a results-based strategic planning tool for coordinating our interventions against illicit drug use and trafficking and related organized crime in Nigeria. This fourth edition of the NDCMP is the outcome of 2 years of coordinated, collaborative, and multi-agency effort of experts from all the relevant ministries, departments, and agencies, as well as CSOs. And I believe you are there at the launching. We activated standard practice and policy guidelines documents. This is a treatment and rehabilitation document developed in conjunction with the UNODC. The document is like a field manual which provides synergy among our counselors and further boosts our capability at treatment and rehabilitation. As you know, our commands have within them counseling and rehab centers, and we needed to synchronize these centers to adopt the same principles for treatment. And this was what we call the standard practice and policy guidelines. The drug integrity test. We concretize our drive for a drug-free Nigeria with the entrenchment of drug tests in the public sphere, namely tertiary institutions, government, security organizations, and so on. The policy is gaining widespread acceptance, with several government institutions already adopting it. And the NDLEA is prepared at all times, as we have done in the past, to conduct these integrity tests. We've done it for ICPC, NNPC, Country General's Office, the Army, and so on. We have also made a recommendation which was well received by the clergy and traditional institutions so far, that why not introduce drug integrity tests as part of the requirements by couples when they're getting married. if the question is put to even you, gentlemen of the press, that how many of you would like your daughters to marry drug addicts, nobody will raise his hand. Or is there anyone here? Nobody. So why take a chance? You might as well conduct the test and be certain of what your family is getting into. What are some of our key achievements? This is obviously the easiest part of it for me because it is also the part of the development in the past 1 year that is well known to the public. And thanks to you, the media, these activities were well publicized. We can take solace in the fact that our achievements of 2021 surpassed the records of any given year of the past 30 years or so of the agency. In drug supply reduction, our interdiction efforts yielded unparalleled results, which, as of December 31st, 2021, are as follows. We've arrested 12,306 suspects, including 7 drug barons in the net. We've convicted 1,400 offenders. We have 1,502 cases in court pending. We have seized over 3.4 million kilograms of assorted drugs. Now, if you do the arithmetic, this quantum of kilograms seized would be shared at least 15 grams by each Nigerian. This is what we have prevented from getting to the street. And as you know, for those who do cannabis and stuff, 1 or 2 grams is all that they need for a shot. We've seized drugs and cash worth over 130 billion. We've destroyed 406 hectares of cannabis farms. We've counseled and rehabilitated 7,761 drug users in our facilities. So one thing to be very clear about is that more than half of those arrested go for rehabilitation, counseling and rehabilitation. It's not that all the people that we arrest, we send them off to jail. We have our own rules and regulations that determine who should be prosecuted under what conditions and who actually needs counseling and help rather than jail. In the areas of improvement of the workforce, we have attained the following, some of which are in the this year's budget. We have approval now for the construction of 3 more forensic laboratories. This is very important and significant to our work. At the moment, we have just 1 in Lagos for the past 30 years. And only this year has there been a significant change by the administration of President Muhammad Buhari for 3 more forensic laboratories across the country. This will make for speedier dispensation of justice. Because if we make seizures in Kano, Maiduguri, Yola, and other places, we have to send them back to Lagos for the forensics to establish exactly what it is. But now there's going to be 3 more. We believe is very significant. We also have the approval this year for the construction of 3 more standard rehab centers. It is in the National Drug Control Master Plan for the NDLEA to have its own stand-alone centers, actually 2 per geopolitical zone. But at least we are starting with something where there was nothing before. It's a very major development. You have to remember that for counseling and initial treatment, most Nigerians first think and go to NDLEA for help. We have an improved budget. We have approval for the construction of barracks this year, another very significant development for the agency. Other security agencies, all of them, have their barracks. Armed forces, police, immigration, customs, and so on. Only the NDLEA. And certainly, the absence of barracks has caused us major problems, and they continue to do so, because we operate out of the cities and towns. We arrest, send the people to jail through the court system, and they come after us in our homes because we live amongst them. So these barracks will give greater confidence and security to our personnel and their families. We've also successfully concluded the recruitment and training of 5,000 officers and men this year, which effectively doubles the strength of the NDLEA. The other developments that are worth mentioning are as follows. Our allies and our international partners, now with renewed confidence and trust in the agency, have returned to us. We also have new partnerships. We signed an MOU with our Gambian counterpart, the Drug Law Enforcement Agency of the Gambia in Banjul, on August 4, 2021, to formally seal their cooperation to combat illicit production, manufacture, and trafficking in narcotic drugs. I led that delegation myself. A similar MOU was signed with Cote d'Ivoire on 7 November 2021, while the same partnership with Saudi Arabia's General Directorate of Narcotics Control, as well as those of Pakistan, India, and South Africa, are ongoing and will hopefully materialize this year. These developments are symbolic of the growing influence of the NDLEA and recognition of Nigeria's effort in the anti-narcotic space. You will notice we hear less and less of Nigerians arrested abroad in the airports unlike in the past. Less and less. Donations of equipment and training from our strategic partners, such as the UNODC, the US Drug Enforcement Administration, the United Kingdom Border Force, the National Crime Authority of the United Kingdom, foreign governments. We have received equipment and training as follows. The UK government gave us a speedboat for our marine services. We are given operational equipment like body shields, bulletproof jackets, helmets, handcuffs, walkie-talkies, motorcycles, vehicles from the government of France. We are given new buses and dogs by the German government. The German government is also helping with the construction of a €2 million dog training facility. I should seize this opportunity also to point or highlight some of the spectacular seizures recorded by the agency since January last year. These include the following: 230 tons of cannabis was seized in Edo State in February, and a recent seizure of over 100 tons of psychotropic substance across the country in the past 2 weeks. 500,000 captagon tablets, weighing over 70 kilograms, was seized at Apapa Seaport. This was the first ever recorded seizure of the drug in the West and Central African zones. And this particular seizure was made possible both by the professionalism of our men and our canine unit, the dogs. We seized about 2 million capsules of tramadol in February at the Apapa port, and another 144,400 bottles of codeine syrup in March, and in October, 32.9 kilograms of cocaine. We seized another 43.11 kilograms of cocaine at Tinkan Seaport, and another 22,590 kilograms of codeine syrup at the port in September. We seized about 5 million capsules of tramadol, weighing over 2 tons in May at the One port, and another interception of 100,000 bottles of codeine cough syrups. We've seized 2 tons cannabis sativa in a concrete mixer, loaded in Agbese, Ondo State, and intercepted along Gire, Yola, Adamawa State on 2nd December 2021. What was interesting about this particular seizure was they left Ondo State to Yola, and it took them 1 month to meander and try to dodge our operatives. 30 days, but we still got them. I'm sure you know that some of the barons and big dealers constantly contact their babalawos to guide them on the route and the dates that they should take in order to beat the NDLEA operatives. What a nefarious attitude from these people. But still, we get them at the end of the day. In December last year alone, over 34 tons of cannabis smuggled from Ghana were intercepted at the Eco Atlantic City Beach, while more than 8 million capsules and tablets of tramadol were seized in Lagos a week before Christmas. Just last week, about 1.5 million capsules of the same drug loaded in Onitsha, Anambra State, heading to Kebbi and Kano, were also intercepted by our men in Edo State. At the airports, we have recorded a series of interceptions and seizures of cocaine and heroin, but Murtala Mohammed International Airport remains the epicenter of the spectacular seizures, including what stands today as the biggest single seizure from an individual in 15 years, which is 26.84 kilograms of cocaine smuggled from Brazil in January, 24 kilograms of heroin in April, 27.95 kilograms of cocaine in May, and 26.15 kilograms of heroin in May, all Murtala Mohammed International Airport. What are our plans for 2022 and beyond? After 1 year of restructuring and rejuvenation, the NDLEA is now an organization of bolstered workforce with 15 directorates, 115 formations across 14 zonal commands, 36 state commands, with the FCT making it 37, and 10 special area commands, 5 airports and 5 seaports. In 2022, we are going to build on the foundation laid in 2021. That building process includes continued recruitment and training of more officers. We are set to increase our staff strength this year. The intensification of the war against drug abuse campaign and the amendment of the NDLEA Act, which is awaiting second reading in the National Assembly. We also look forward to the procurement of additional arms, ammunition, and more sophisticated equipment for our use. In conclusion, therefore, I must state clearly that it is not solely by our efforts that we were able to achieve all the results of 2021. We have enablers, facilitators, and supporters who helped to bring the NDLEA back on its feet. First and foremost, all praise and glory must go to the Almighty Allah for all the successes recorded. Our gratitude goes to President Muhammad Buhari, who gave the agency the necessary fillip, guidance, encouragement, and a new spine. Likewise, the Honorable Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, the Senate Committee on Narcotic Drugs, and the House Committee on Drugs and Narcotics supported us all the way.